Hey, welcome back to the show, everybody. I'm so grateful to be here today recording the third highlight reel of Trust the Process at the end of season 3 of the show. I was just thinking about how many people have been able to reach out to me and share via comments on YouTube or emails just how the show has impacted them. And it's just been very humbling to see how it's been listened to all over the world. And some people have told me that they've listened to certain episodes, like several times, just so they could get everything they needed from it. And that just is so heartwarming and gratifying for me. So today, like every other season, I am doing a highlight reel of my thoughts from each interview, I should say, from season 3. So here we go. So first we had Dr. Ryan Nielsen, who has been one of the most impactful people I've ever had in my life, one of the greatest mentors I've had. And I just really loved about how he talked about the difference between attachment and authenticity and how we need both as human beings, but how those can get pitted against each other in injury. In order to keep ourselves healthy, we have to stay authentic to ourselves. But then those who have gone through injury, how beautiful of an opportunity it can be for you. And so here's a little bit from my conversation with Dr. Ryan Nielsen. You say something really beautiful in this video I've already addressed, that our limits are teachers, or that if we can frame our limits as teachers, that is a part of this whole process. And I think that really goes into, helping, like what you were just saying, of helping your students regain that inner trust in themselves and their intuition. Kind of go into, like, what do you mean by your limits are teachers, and how does that feed into what you were just saying?
Yeah, well, I think that let's see, what comes to mind there is this. Like our culture's obsession with striving, which when that's out of balance, when that obsession with striving is out of balance, limits are there to be broken down rather than partnered with. And that's when we risk injury. It's like, truly, when you decide that through an act of will, through sheer will, you're going to push through that boundary today, instead of, again, partnering with, getting curious about, asking that limit, why are you there? What are you protecting? This is definitely a theme in our conversation today. The limits become teachers, because that's where, when you become a really adept practitioner, you live in the ecosystem of the in-between. So biology is a great metaphor for this. Biological evolution does not happen in the center of an ecosystem. It happens where two ecosystems meet and blend. And that's where learning happens for us too. So wherever you experience that limit, if you can skillfully get right close to it and start to ask questions about it and explore above, sorry, my phone's, and if you can partner with that and explore and like from above and below and left and right and behind and through, and you're just living at the limit, not strenuously, but approaching it like there's a folk tale. There's a Japanese folk tale. I'm gonna go all the way non-rational here. So there's a Japanese folk tale about a woman who is given a task. I'll give a very short version of it. She has to go up to the top of a mountain and get a single hair from the crescent moon bear. And when she gets to the top of the mountain, if she goes too aggressively towards the crescent moon bear, she'll be eaten. So it's high stakes. So, and in our conversation, that would be an injury, right? So she spends days gradually moving slower, closer to the bear's den, leaving food out for it, right? And it goes through all of these things that she does in order to very gradually get curious about this limit, until she's able to ask the bear for one of its crescent moon hairs, and she's able to obtain it. And then when she returns to fulfill the task that she was supposed to do from gaining it, it's one of those stories where it was never about the hair. It was about what she had to develop as a person to get it, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I think that's a great analogy for this. It's like you walk up to the limit. You have to get curious about it. You partner with it. You let it be there. You don't wish it was different than it was, because it's a freaking bear. You can't change that.
You won't win against a bear.
You won't win against a bear. That's right. So it's like, that gradual, gentle process of kind of courting that limit and until finally you learn from it. On a very practical version of that story is an experience that I had with Sam Palafian, another great mentor of mine who passed away a few years ago. The thing about Sam's teaching, it was insane what he could do. He was just this crazy coach. It was unbelievable to watch him. And my experience of working with Sam would be like, he'd be like, okay, what do you want to work on? And I only had like 2 lessons with him. I used to go hang out with his group teaching all the time, but I only had a couple of private lessons with him. And he'd ask me what I wanted to work on, and I would tell him, and I'd play for him. And then he would just design this thing where I would find myself gently bumping into the edge of what I was capable of and failing over and over and over again. And he would just let me fail. There was no pressure not to. And then all of a sudden he would say like 3 words and I'd be like, boom. And all of a sudden I was standing on the other side of the limit holding a new skill in hand. And so that's like it's like that sense of just gently bumping into the edge of what you can do and not wishing it was different. And then all of a sudden, just one little tweak.
You're one little bang, tweak away. Yeah.
You're right over the edge of that former limit. And it is the limit that is the teacher.
Then we had the great Andy Martin, and I was just so thrilled that I could get him on the show, that he was willing to be on the show. I'm very humbled by his willingness to share his story. And especially since he works in an environment where if you're open about those things, it can be kind of hard to get work. To that point, I really appreciated his candidness, being willing to not sugarcoat anything that he was going through, but also not downplay the good things that were happening in his life. The support that he had from his friends. I especially really enjoyed our conversation surrounding identity, because it seemed like he was making some connections as he was talking to me. I could see it in his face. He was just like, oh, I hadn't thought about that. That's, just like, it was really cool to see that. So here's a little piece of my conversation with the great Andy Martin. One of the biggest reasons why musicians push themselves too far is because it's their instruments, their identity. And we talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
And it's what you do. You and I, we blow raspberries into a piece of plumbing. And somehow people pay us for it, And music is a wonderful and beautiful thing, and it's part of our expression, but it's an extension of us, not us.
Yeah.
And
that's very.
And so go ahead. Go ahead.
On that, yeah, because that's a big part of what I'm going through too. Not only the issues of not playing as well as I used to, is the issues of, that's my identity. And when I think about retiring and just quitting, I never thought I'd ever stop playing. I never thought. But now I'm thinking I might just not just put it in the closet and say no and move on with my life. But then again, it's my identity. Who when people hear my name, what do they know? Oh, he's that trombone player. He's that guy. He's that guy. He played in the Fat Band. He did this. He made records. He improvises. He does this. And he turned into a studio player, and he reached the top of the mountain, And so that is my identity, and that's the toughest thing to let go. But I have been able to slowly realize that, okay, maybe it's not that important. Maybe that shouldn't be what I'm concerned about. I have a legacy. I've earned it, and maybe if I've really admired a guy named Johan Racy. Just from what he did. He had this great career in the studios. He was a fantastic classical trumpet player and commercial trumpet player, sat in orchestras. He had polio, so he couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair. But he was this beautiful trumpet player. He's the one that played this trumpet solo in the movie Chinatown. And but he said, when I'm 60, my 60th birthday, I'm putting the trumpet in the case and putting it in the closet, never going to play again. He taught for the rest of his life. He taught other trumpet players and was a great teacher, fantastic teacher. But he said, I'm done at 60. And I have to admire that because that takes a lot of balls. He's at the top of the business. He's making a bunch of money. He's playing on all the top film calls in town as a staff musician. And so he had the business by the balls. You know, he had it. He got it. He was there. And he just said, next man up. And so that's very admirable. And I don't know anybody before or since who's ever done that. I don't know. I haven't heard of anybody to do that. Just say, when I turn 60, I'm done. Well, I'm thinking of when I'm 65, I might do that. I'm thinking of it. Just say, you know what? I'm stopping to take call. I might play some jazz gigs for fun, play some free rehearsals for fun, do that for fun. But maybe next man up is the way I should look at it. And so my legacy has already been established. So I think I've lived a great musical life. And I wish it could continue longer, but it's not going to. If I'm not going to play as well as I want to play, I'm just going to say, enough. I've tried to recover from this dystonia for a while. I've reached a certain level. Am I going to get further? Maybe a little further. Am I going to get to where I was? I doubt it. And if I can't, maybe I'll just say, that's it. You know, next man up. And so it already is kind of that way anyway, since I turned down so many calls and the younger guys are working now. That's fine. But yeah, I admire guys like Dick Nash who can work into his 80s and still play great and still take all those calls. Charlie Loper, freaking awesome lead trombone player. Just, I think the best lead trombone player I've ever worked with.
One of the greatest, yeah.
Yeah, and so he made it. He was worried about gigs when he was 88 years old, and he's worried about not being on a gig. And I'm thinking, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be him in the peak of his career, but I don't want to be that guy worried about a gig when I'm 80 something. Forget that, you know. Come on, so there's certain people that can't let it go, and I'm being forced to let it go, but I'm fine with it. I've become fine with it. I wasn't fine with it, but I'm becoming fine with it.
Yeah.
If that's good advice for somebody listening in, you know, I want to play, and I can still play as well as almost everybody else. I used to play better than everybody else, but now I can keep up with the Joneses, kinda. But I still want to play, and I still want to work. But I'm fine if it doesn't happen. So it's okay.
Then we had Jason Schaefer, who plays clarinet with the Colorado Symphony. And I thought it was really valuable for me, and I hope for you, in how he talked about the difference between performance consulting and being a CMPC, a Certified Mental Performance Consultant, which is something that I'm working towards, and being a therapist, because both are really valuable. Both are something that I have used. However, you know, it depends on what we're using them for, and like what are the hallmarks of needing a therapist versus needing a CMPC, a mental performance consultant or performance coach. And then also talking about like the benefit of investing in a more neurolinguistic programming or transformation style of coaching. All of those have value, and they all serve different purposes, and I think they all can help you on your road to recovery. So, but that being said, it's up to you as the individual going through the injury to make that call. And you can do that and I recommend you do that with somebody who knows what's up, who's experienced this and knows where they can turn you. So here's a little bit of my conversation with Jason Schaefer. So my next question is you kind of alluded to it earlier, but the relationship that an injured musician or injured performer should have between maybe performance consulting and maybe a therapist or a traditional psychologist. I've had a psychologist on the show who is now a performance coach, and cool. And so it's kind of interesting to see the relationship there. But if you want to just kind of go into maybe somebody out there who's looking to get that sort of help, what are some, I guess, calling cards of this is like something you need to see a therapist for, and this is something that a performance consultant can help you with? Because I don't think we've really gotten into that on the show, but I think it'd be really beneficial for injured musicians to know.
No, I'm really glad you brought that up. I think it's interesting because there are, just because, for example, that I'm not a therapist and don't have that training doesn't mean that, someone who needs therapy would have no benefit from a performance consultant. So there's definitely, right. I think actually probably the majority of really quite most musicians that I work with are also seeing a therapist. So just to make that distinction, like someone who is a performance consultant, first of all, I think it's important for a musician who wants to, or any performing artist who wants to work with someone who is versed in performance psychology, they should have a master's degree in it, at least. And then this CMPC certification is a really important and helpful thing as well. It's actually very unusual, and there are very few people that actually have the CMPC certification right now that want to work in the performing arts. It's almost all people who are focused in athletics. Fortunately, that's changing. Like when I was just at the national conference for the Association for Applied Sports Psychology, there's quite a number of people now that are getting master's degrees in performance psychology or sport and performance psychology and getting the certification that want to work with performing artists specifically. So there's nothing necessarily against someone who just calls themselves a life coach or has certifications in wellness and things like that. But someone who is really working as a performance consultant, has studied performance psychology, if they have those proper qualifications, they're really have actually really examined the evidence base behind what mental skills can help someone who's having any performance related issue. So I think if anybody is really interested in exploring that, and how performance psychology can help you, I think understanding and looking for someone who has that expertise. It's actually, I'm not saying that's universal. Like, for example, Dr. Kageyama is like the most well-known person in this field. And he's technically, I think he's got his doctorate in clinical psychology and just did a lot of research and work in performance psychology. So I think like just making sure you really know someone's background and history and what they've actually studied. I have seen people who just say, "Oh yeah, I do work in performance psychology," but just have never looked into it at all. So I think that to answer a little more of the question of what's the distinction, we actually talked a little bit before about how your life experiences and things that have happened in your life can affect your performance, right? So if you have gone through trauma, if you have generalized anxiety, or you've had issues with depression or mood, those are all things that a performance consultant does not address. That's what the main things that therapy can help you with is what you're experiencing in your life and what you've gone through that affects your daily life, that affects your mood and your feelings. Even if those things are huge contributors to performance issues, that's really where a therapist has to be the one to work with you. The reason it's interesting though, because I've talked to a number of musicians that said, well, my only access to any help with this is a therapist because I don't know anybody that does any performance psychology work. And the therapist says, I don't know much about performing, like I'll help you with the anxiety, but I don't know. I mean, I've even had some people tell me that they've gone to a therapist and the therapist says, it sounds like music is really hard. You should probably quit. And it's just because they don't understand the reasons, right?
Right. Exactly.
So I do think that I'm not saying that all therapists are like that. I've seen many therapists myself that are really wonderful and very understanding of the performing arts, and some that have a lot of experience with it. But I do think that sometimes getting help with those issues with a therapist, and working with someone who really is a performance consultant and has experience in the performing arts, I think can be a really incredible combination for someone who's struggling, not only with injury recovery, but anything, confidence, performance anxiety. Because I think then I find most of the credibility that I get with the musicians I work with actually comes from the fact that I'm a musician and I get it and I struggle with performance anxiety all the time still, absolutely. I'm not some expert in that I've overcome it perfectly or something. I struggle with it myself. So I think finding someone who really understands the performing arts domain, both in a therapist, I suppose, but also someone that you're going to work with from the performance psychology perspective, I think can be really beneficial.
Hey guys, I just want to interrupt the show real quick and just tell you about something I've been working on for a long time that I'm so excited to share with you. Like I've said in the past, you have the potential to make your injury become a benefit to you, an asset to you. But at the same time, I know the feeling of being lost, not knowing who to turn to, where to go, what resources to use, all sorts of things, and also how to reframe the situation, the mental skills that's needed to be able to do that. And so if you are one of those people looking for that resource, that help, that coaching, I want to tell you about something I've been working on, and that is Musician Unchained. Musician Unchained is now the newest coaching platform for musicians going through injury. It is intended to help you view your situation in a way that benefits you and make the changes in your life that you need to become the best version of yourself because of your injury. Your injury being the impetus for that change. I would love to be able to help you in any way that I can, even if that means sending you somewhere else to someone who can better help you. And so if you are interested in working together one-on-one, visit our website, musicianunchained.com/let's hang for more details. All right, let's get back to the show. Then I was so grateful to have Dr. Bronwyn Ackerman on the show. She is another member of my personal recovery team, and she has taught me often on the camera about the distinction of pain being in your head, how we sometimes misconstrue that, but how it's ultimately true. One thing that I wasn't expecting to get from that interview, but I was grateful that I did, was actually just some of her research behind musicians being commonly dehydrated. They're often dehydrated. That was new to me, although it makes sense. And hydration is probably one of the easiest things we can do to keep ourselves healthy. And I'm just so grateful for her and her expertise and really being a pioneer in this field of performing arts medicine. And it was just awesome to see that on the show. So without further ado, here's Dr. Bronwyn Ackerman. This next question would be something we've also talked about quite extensively. And I already know the answer to this question. I'll preface it with that, but is pain all in our head?
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll do a swap now. If you hand me your pain and show it in front of the camera, I'll show mine.
What's that?
Show me your pain in front of the camera and I'll show you mine. Like you
can't show it, yeah.
Yeah, right? Of course it's in your head, but it doesn't mean it's not there. It just means the brain's a powerful organ that interprets sensations and feelings and even anxiety and all sorts of things can give a perception of pain. It doesn't mean that you don't have a real injury, and I think that's got to be clear. It's just that many, many things can lead to pain, like fear of pain makes pain worse. There's all sorts of really interesting things like this. A friend of mine, Lorimer Moseley, is a wonderful pain scientist and has created a lot of resources for anyone going through pain. If you look up Lorimer Moseley, you'll see a million pages of things. But he has, they're fantastic at coming up with various acronyms, but he has this tool he calls the protectometer, and he calls it dim sims is the process. So the danger in me and safety in me, attitudes towards various aspects of your life, that kind of feed into this pain system. And it's really fantastic because instead of looking at something and think, oh, I'm worried about that, I'm not sure, and seeing all the danger around you, you try and identify the safety instead and start thinking, oh yes, I think I should be able to manage that, or I can see that that's possible for me to do. And so you try and build up the safety aspects. So, one example you could give in movement, I had a singer who had a back problem. And when she came in, she was so disabled because her whole back she was holding very rigid. She could barely move. And really we worked a lot on getting her just to kind of get a bit stronger and protect the spot that she was having problems with, but move normally elsewhere. And it made a huge difference just not to be, like to try and find the safety she had through her body and let that kind of emerge. And if she felt she needed to protect the spot that was worrisome, well, that's okay, but you don't want it to stop you doing everything. So this protectometer, or looking at the danger in your situation and being aware if you look at the negatives. And I would say practice, ironically, is kind of a good example of a bad perspective often in music. Is you get to your end of the practice session and you go, well, that was terrible. Instead of saying, well, 95% was really good and I did all these things and just 5% I didn't kind of get quite what I wanted. And, there's a lot of research in sports medicine. Again, really interesting research on how to enhance motor skills in training. And, one of the really important things is looking at the positives of it. That should be the first thing you do, is that you practice and you identify what you did well, before you start looking at what didn't go so well. Because what I find astounding is that I would say to people, practice includes physical and mental skills. If that's what you need, it should be part of your allocated practice time. If that's the thing that's holding you back, put time into it. You can't just hope it'll magically disappear. You have to work on it like anything else. But with your musical skills, the same thing, set your practice goals or whatever. We know for sure that when you practice, you should pre-evaluate, do what you do, then post-evaluate. And I find it's quite common for people to be doing mindless practice, like spending hours on their instrument without really doing what we call, I guess, from old studies again in musicians, actually, this deliberate practice. This concept that you've really practice for a reason, not just hours on the instrument.
Then we had Jose Johnson, who's a fellow Central Pennsylvanian. And that was another full circle moment for me, because when I was first exploring this idea of doing a podcast, he was one of the first people I talked to about it, because I knew he had done lots of podcasts through his trumpet related things and through mindset, martial arts, different topics that he covers on podcasts. And I was really grateful for his perspective when I started this whole journey. I also really appreciated his take on exploring different traditions when it comes to recovering from an injury, especially the mental side of injury and just life in general, because as Western art related musicians, we sometimes forget that there is a whole another hemisphere on this earth of people that have found truth and ways to recover, ways to explore and view the world. And so these Eastern methodologies like meditation and mindfulness through martial arts, and his experience with martial arts was really helpful to me. And then I loved how he just talked about how we do what we do because of who we are. We aren't who we are because of what we do, So I thought that was a great distinction that he made. So here's a little bit of my conversation with Jose. The thing I was thinking about when you were talking about that is my own personal experience, and I think most people who have gone through an injury, is they want to give, one of the reasons why they want to give control of their recovery to somebody else, especially with regards to overuse injuries, where it's like somebody was over practicing or ignored the signals their body was sending them and all that stuff. They want to give control because they lost trust in themselves, and so that concept of reframing, changing who you're trying to become, I think is really important with that, because that puts the ball back in your court. That is helping you regain the trust that you once had in yourself. And I've had some very prominent players recently just tell me, like, through their injuries, it's like they just, things they had never worried about before, all of a sudden they're just like, their confidence is completely just gone because of what they've been through. And I think in order for them to regain that confidence, this is something that they have to do, is reframe their thinking to get the ball back in their court, that they are in control of or in charge. I'm going to start saying in charge. They are in charge of their recovery. They are in charge of their progress, but they can't necessarily control every outcome,
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean, when I took those 7 years off, I was really focusing on what was important to me at the time, what was my priority. And I knew deep down in my heart that I would come back to music in some way, shape, or form. Now, with that being said, talking about like being sort of thing, I want to kind of make an important distinction, specifically as it relates to injuries and things that affect our ability to do what we have been doing and what we love doing. I used to my main martial arts mentor I used to live with him. I lived with him for like a year and a half. Lived in his basement. You know, and the reason I lived with him was because his wife, who was a professional dancer, choreographer, she taught dance at a couple Case Western and a couple of the colleges, and so she's a very, very well known and well respected dancer. She contracted Lyme disease. Now, this is back in the early 90s. There was little known about Lyme. And as a result of her Lyme and the fact that it had gone so long untreated, she developed a really debilitating case of rheumatoid arthritis.
Oh, man.
And to the point where there's about a 6-month period where she couldn't get out of bed. Like, her husband had to like get her out of bed, and she had to use a walker and, all this stuff. And it really tore her down. And I remember having a talk with her as she came out of this, long, dark night of the soul. She said, the hardest part of this for me was I was always Kathy the dancer. And I had to come to grips that I will never be Kathy the dancer again. But I realized who I really was. I wasn't what I do. I do because of who I am. And that has kind of stuck with me, that I am Jose the musician, the trumpet player. I'm Jose the coach. I'm Jose the speaker. I'm Jose the podcaster. I'm all these are all just different facets of who I am. But if the day comes that I can no longer play trumpet or play music of any type, that doesn't make me any less of a person. It just means that I can't express myself through that venue anymore. And it may be painful, but it doesn't mean the end of my life. And I think that so many people, especially high-level people, people that are at the top of their game, you see this in music, you see this in sports, you see this, across the board, that you reach a point where you're no longer at the top of your game. And because you're not that guy anymore, that you start to question, who am I? And because your identity is so wrapped up in what you do. So I think one of the healthiest things that any of us can do is to create that awareness and that separation between these are the activities that I choose to do to express an aspect of who I am. But I can express that through a variety of ways. And that's why I still, am actively involved in martial arts and still actively involved in music and all that stuff. All these to me are different facets of who I am, and they're ways of expressing what my core values are, which are learning, having fun, and sharing. If I can do those three things, then my life is perfect as far as I'm concerned. But I can do that in so many different ways. I can learn more about trumpet. I can learn about coaching. I can learn about neuropsych. I can learn about all kinds of things, and I can share that information. And I can have fun and let other people have fun through the process as well. So I'm not beholden to just this one way of doing things. There has to be the options have to be in front of you. And I think that when you were recovering, particularly as we're recovering from an injury, or you're going through an embouchure change, or any of these sort of things, having these career crises and things like that, that if you can kind of separate yourself, kind of a mindfulness technique, being non-judgmental and just saying, okay, well, here's the situation. All right. This is what it is. Now, what am I going to make out of it? What are the steps that I want to take? Where do I really want to see myself? And then what am I willing to do in order to achieve that? Because there's always a cost involved.
Then we had my conversation with Gabriel Radford. He plays horn in the Toronto Symphony, and he and I have worked together off and on a little bit over the past year in different capacities. He really was just an honest guy. And I think, like I was saying with Andy, it's really important that as we are going through our injuries, and I think those of you in the audience who are currently going through an injury can appreciate the value of being candid and being honest from the people you are receiving help from, but also from the people who have gone through it. That helps you know what you can expect to some extent. That's not 100% accurate all the time, but I really appreciated his honesty and his not sugarcoating anything, but also his thoughtful approach of answering my questions in general. He's just worked so hard, and because of his experience with injury and embouchure dysfunction, to create a valuable resource, and he's created the Embouchure Project, which is helping so many brass musicians find the help that they need, and encouraging research in our practitioners, and just that has helped so many people. I'm on their Facebook group, and there are always people asking questions, and he's in every comment section connecting people with practitioners. The other thing I want to bring up with him is just that concept of not falling for pots of gold when you're recovering from an injury, because you'll have ups and downs through your recovery throughout the entire process. And when we think that we have found one thing that it just solves all of our problems, we might have to take a second look. So anyway, here's that moment from my conversation with Gabriel.
The culmination of this injury was the formation of the Embouchure Project. And so
Yes.
the thing about the Embouchure Project is that there's a few goals in there. Okay. So first of all, I spent $20,000 of my own money on practitioners, on people trying to help me. I have never given Bronwyn $1. She was doing research at the time. So I was under her research projects. And there were a lot of people that I gave a lot of money, including one practitioner, $14,000 or $15,000.
Wow.
So yeah, this can be a huge, huge financial outlay, and it's important for everybody to understand that this can be part of the experience. But the Embouchure Project was to try to find the people that really knew what they were doing, to find the real honest brokers who are willing to say, "I can't help you." Like, I think that is. Any practitioner in any health field should know when to say, "I've done my work with you. You're not better. Let me see if I can find you something else, or you should go see someone else." I think that's a fundamental ethical thing that practitioners do, and people don't do that because it's their business. I sort of understand it. The other thing is that I'm trying to inspire research at the academic level so that we get neurologists who are working with physiotherapists and occupational therapists to develop ways to retrain. The data on retraining is about, I don't want to say the only, but one of the really hopeful data points that we have in recovery is retraining, which you can think of as, working on the muscles, putting them in the right order, and firing them in a healthy way to play our instruments. So that's really working. So we need those people to be doing research and publishing that. So what I say is it crowds out the people that are making stuff up as they go. And it brings in science, medical science. We have it for a reason. We know that things work. And finally, and importantly, getting back to your point, it's to build a community
Absolutely.
where I'm not by myself. I'm not weak. This is not me being a, psychologically challenged, weak, individual that shouldn't belong in the gladiator ring. It's none of those things. And so as a community, then we can communicate and say, no, this is something that happens to people, and it happens through no fault of their own. And we need to be a community that says, when this happens to you, we got you. Doesn't mean
Absolutely.
that we're not going to wave a magic wand and you're going to get better, but that you're part of a community now, and we can help you find that path as best you can towards health. And so that community, this social psychologist that you're talking about, I believe that to be true, that you might not get that at work. It's, work is intense. We're performing for people. It's a highly charged environment. We care about what we do more than any other profession on earth, and with many other professionals on earth. And so we really, really care about standards. And so if somebody isn't pulling their weight, you can feel the social pressure hard. And so sometimes that community you're talking about can happen in the Embouchure Project or Trust the Process, or in your family at home or your friends. But yes, I think that what you said is precisely true. And that goes back to my thing about being honest. Not lying to your friends, everything's fine, just going to work, but actually bringing them in. And it can take a while to explain to people, because people jump to conclusions instantly. They think you're just, I have one doctor who just called it stage fright. I'm like, Doc, I've been doing this over 20 years. This is not stage fright, like, come on. So yeah, I would say that finding a community is incredibly valuable.
And then we had my conversation with my personal coach, Steve Rosset. And I am just so grateful that he was willing to share his experience and expertise, especially regarding neurolinguistic programming. That's something I want to keep exploring on this show because I feel like it's really valuable when it comes to just really changing our mindset about our injury, but also in general about how we view our experiences in life. And that confidence and that way we view things can really help us, can be really critical actually to successful recovery. And that does take investment, both of time and of money and just of mental energy. But I hope what you got from that episode was that it can and will be worth it if you choose to make that investment. So here's my conversation with Steve Rosset.
It's an amazing difference. And going back to what you were saying before I answer the question is, COI, we can phrase it with a bit of an NLP phrase. What's it going to cost me if I don't?
Right.
Or as one of our M4C members said, when I joined Steve's program, I was asking myself, how can I afford this? Now I'm looking back on it. How could have I afforded not to?
Right. Exactly.
We have a lot of wonderful things happening with the Sydney Symphony Orchestra. Very proud to be a member of the SSO. One of the things that we do is we have a coach coming in. They were saying, hey, Steve, what would you think about doing a coaching thing for the orchestra? I'm saying, no, I'm a member of the orchestra. Get somebody else.
There you go.
Otherwise, I'll coach our musicians privately one-on-one. That's fine.
Sure.
And so we got a really good coach, and she came in and said, hey, guess what? All expenses paid to the musicians, 20 of you. And we're going to go off to some resort for a week, and we're going to work on mindset and mental health, wellness, the whole thing.
Amazing.
And then we're going to start talking about our values. Wonderful. And I'm going, wonderful. Now, I was coming back to Adelaide building my business. I had some big projects on. So I said, oh, next year. And they got about 15 musicians. And most musicians are going like, well, no, thank you. For whatever reason, with all respect. No, thank you. The ones that did it came back. If you can say happiness, gratitude, love, all bundled up in a form of aura energy, these people came back like, and they're playing, already wonderful playing, their playing was better. And when something was challenging in the workplace or musically, they just were stepping into the best version of, and I was just saying to one of them was an M4C member as well. And I just said, hey, power of coaching, huh? And he said, yeah. And the coach says to me, the coach doing the program was saying to me, you know what it is a lot of times the people who really need it are the ones who won't volunteer.
Yeah.
And the ones who don't really need it, do it, and they just come out better. And that's another example of what coaching is. People who just want to be the best version of themselves. And this is what a lot of people don't realize is it's easy to stay the same, to stay with our problems, to complain about them, get attention from them. And we get addicted to this feeling. What's hard is to step out of that, change our attitudes, change our actions, go do something different, pay some money, turn up on Zoom, whatever happens to be, go to that retreat to do something that's different than our pattern behavior. That is hard. And in NLP coaching, we say, guess what, folks? It often, if not usually, needs to get harder in order for it to get better.
And then yet another full circle moment for me was interviewing Josh Kaufman. Josh and I have known each other for a couple of years now. We were going to start working together, actually. I was going to start taking lessons from him pretty regularly when my injury occurred. He's just been a good friend for these last 5 years. And one of the things that really stuck out to me from that conversation was just, I loved hearing about how becoming a father and investing time in his family, spending time with his family has really informed his trumpet playing and how he views progress on the trumpet. I think he and I definitely had some parallels in how we viewed our college experience, in that we worked as hard as we could, but that kind of led to some unhealthy practice habits, unhealthy mindsets. And we were just actually I was talking to him on the phone the other day about how this old school method of practicing 8 to 12 hours a day just won't have the return on the investment that a couple hours of truly dedicated, optimized practice will. And then that allows us to have a life, I guess, and really find a richness of life that we can then bring to our music. So here's my conversation with Josh. Would you say that you're like kind of investing into this beautiful part of your life with your family and these other interests that you have has informed your career as a musician and as a trumpet artist?
Oh, 1,000%. I think I'm a better trumpet player now because of my son than any other time in my life because of him. It's hard to explain, but sometimes like I tell younger players, especially like in the world of jazz and stuff, where we have so much freedom to express ourselves,
Right.
and to get off the page. Sometimes players that what the questions they're asking, I answer. I say, you just have to live longer. They're like, well, how do you get this thing? And how do you, like you just got to live life. You go through some up and down experiences. You're going to play a lot differently. And for me, I treat my jobs differently. I don't work as much. I still work a lot, but I mean, I was killing myself prior to being a parent. But now I have found so much joy in I'm dressed, ready to walk out the door for another job tonight that I can't wait to go to. And I found new joy in seeing people in the work that I did keep and am still doing. Whereas before I was just trying to have total world domination that I ended up hating every gig because I was just constantly tired and just worn out and didn't want to do it. But well, if I say no to this person, they might never call me again. And what if they hear another trumpet player they really like? And all these crazy things that we all think, whether people admit it or not,
Yeah.
we all think that
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of stuff. And
Guilty
we have to just,
as charged.
we have to be secure enough in ourselves to just not think those things. And the only thing on earth that would have stopped me from doing that was becoming a parent. That's the only thing. And now being a parent, and I love my wife. Has nothing to do with her. Like, it's not that I don't see her less than my son. She's the mother of my children. She comes first. But you hold this sweet little baby that you literally created. She did the hard work, but created together.
Right.
And it just the instant I saw him, everything, my entire life changed. And now with him, again, like he comes through my little door in my office and he just loses his marbles when he comes home from daycare. He sees me sitting here. He gets so excited. He starts pointing at all my trumpets and he just wants to jump up on my lap, touch the keyboard and hit all his there's no better feeling on earth. And so I feel like I treat music differently than now because of those experiences. For sure. 100%. We have to live life. And the other thing I think too is like, I did have some teachers that could be pretty brutal and mean. And looking back, I just don't see how that's helpful. You can have hard conversations and say like, listen, if you want to go work in LA, you're going to have to put the work in. You're just not cutting it
Yeah.
right now. You can have these hard conversations without disrespecting the person. And I find that some people don't know how to do that. Now, there's a fine balance because I also feel like sometimes teachers and students are just too soft. They can't handle the truth. And they just like, we lie to children in order just to make them feel happy and safe. And then they graduate with a music degree and they can't get a job. It's because they're not good, But I'm not going to demean them as an individual. That's the important thing. And so that I learned that too. Like, if you're not cutting it or it's not working out in lessons, like I'm going to hold your feet to the fire, but I'm not going to disrespect you as like a lesser person and spit on your shoes because you don't sound good. I mean, again, we're not curing cancer here.
Right.
Music, all of us trumpet players could disappear from the earth and the world will be just fine. The world will turn without us just fine. And so I'm just grateful that we don't play like the sack butt or the ophicleide or all these like obsolete instruments. Maybe trumpet will be obsolete one day. I don't know. But for the time being, I'm glad that we are still able to make a living playing this trumpet. And so I think trying to walk through life with more grace and empathy, I think is just much. You can find that balance between demanding a lot of yourself and your peers, but at the same time respecting the human value of everybody too. Because I feel like the music world sometimes can get pretty brutal.
Hey guys, hope you're enjoying the show. I just wanted to jump in here real quick and tell you about something that I'm really, really excited about. For a while now, I've wanted to create an even more effective resource than just the podcast that injured musicians can go to receive the support that they need. And recently I did just that. So write this down. Trust the Process Podcast Injured Musician Support Group. I know it's a long title. We're still working on that part. But this is a place where people can go now, injured musicians and even musicians who have gone through injury in the past, and people that help musicians go through injury, where they can go to receive the support that they need, whether that be ask questions, share their victories, share their frustrations, and overall just receive the community and the support that they need in a very proactive, intentional way. And so I just ask that you guys support these injured musicians by sharing this group with them, that they can receive the support that they need. Okay, enjoy the rest of the show. Then I had the privilege of talking with Dr. Karina Joly. She just has done so much research, and I was so happy I was able to talk to her on the show, because that's something that was one of my goals for this season, was to kind of start bringing more research into this field, into this podcast, because these researchers are doing so much great work, and the statistics are showing that it's just not getting to the people who need it. That was just one of the biggest blessings for me of having her on the show, was just learning about the research. But then also talking about her experiences doing master classes at colleges, where some people would kind of not give her the time of day because they didn't think this type of work was worth their time. But she just kind of hit the nail on the head by saying one of the coolest things that's ever been said on the show, by saying, if you don't care about your body, I know you care about your playing, and this is going to help your playing a lot. That's my message to you. I echo that. And here's that clip from our conversation. I'm curious, in these workshops that you do, what are some of the reservations that musicians that you're instructing have about implementing these things, or even receiving them at all? Mm-hmm. And then how do you respond to them? Yes. Kind of like a cultural thing that we're still dealing with here, you know?
Yeah. So this happens still today. I don't think this changed. When I go to the places, basically, and their professors who happen to be my colleagues, they make it mandatory. So it happens that I have people in the room that didn't really want to be there because they don't think they need that. Yes. So they say, I don't have any pain. Why do I need to do this? Oh, man, I'm going to have to sit here for 3 hours and do these pelvic motions. There is this attitude. I think this is changing a little bit, but still there's a lot, especially from the people who don't feel problems while they're playing. If you don't feel problems while you're playing, this is really good, but it doesn't mean that you don't have anything to improve, okay? I worked those times, 2009, 2010, 2011 in my body, and I still have a lot of things that I continue working. It's a work in progress. You learn things, you start feeling, oh, I'm having this feeling now. How can I change? Why? You can always change. Anyways, so from my mentor, Johanna Gutzwiller, because I was always regularly seeing her work with the musicians, students at the Scola Cantorum in Basel, which is a conservatoire, part of the Basel Conservatoire, I think. I don't know if it's part, but it happened there. And with musicians that work with ancient instruments. It's amazing. If you look at the trumpet from the Renaissance, that thing is so huge. And totally not ergonomic. And then I saw like a small woman holding that and playing that thing really well. But man, what she was doing with her body in order to be able to do that, And then comes also the keyboard players, like harpsichord, and then you have all this knowledge of you cannot do this fingering, you have to do the fingering from the past, and then you cannot use your thumb, for example, if you go to a competition. So there's something, or you cannot do adaptations with the bassoon, the ancient bassoon. You cannot do some adaptation, but that thing really will hurt you when you have to hold it. So there's also this concept of keeping you have to play exactly how they did in the past, which really could hurt someone. But anyways, yes. A little criticism there with this old schools. But
just let it out.
Coming back with the student, because I think it's going to ring lots of bells. So that's why I bring those things. But so the students, coming back to them. From Johanna Gutzwiller, when I was watching her teaching, what she did was, in the very beginning, she always asked everyone to come and play something. Play 30 seconds, 40 seconds of something in the beginning of her workshop, and then at the end of her workshop, which would be 3 days long, which could be 1 day long, it depended. But she would ask them to play again. During the workshop, they would work on their bodies. In both recordings, they were supposed to not have played right before. So in both recordings, they were supposed to play now, not warmed up. But then the second time, definitely they played after working on their bodies. So I brought this to my workshops. So I didn't really care if I had seen in their faces, oh, I'm not interested in this. Oh, come on, I don't want to move my pelvis. I would just say, hey, let's move. Let's move. Let's do it. Hey, come on. And they had to do it. And at the very end, I couldn't do it with everyone, because if I have a room full of people, I would get 2 or 3 volunteers. So the volunteers would play at the end of the work. And what mostly happened, and later if you want, I can share with you a YouTube link to some of the volunteers playing before and after, because people can see a difference. They would see the difference of their playing. And then I would actually get that recording and we would watch again the first and the second, as Johanna did with her students. I brought that because I knew that would be the only way I could convince the ones who were not interested, or the ones who were thinking they didn't need anything, that this was really good for them. If it's only to get them to play better. Because play better. What is to play better? Would that be to get a sound that you wanted? Because you will be crazy. You would be super surprised when you look at these videos that you hear the sound change, from one performance to the other performance, just because they have more activity in the right place. And then they relaxed here and were able to perform. And most of the people couldn't really realize what happened to their playing. So that's why I record, and that's why they could watch it later. So I tell people, if you don't really care about your body, I know you care about your playing. So I guarantee that if
I love that so much.
We say that I sell my fish. I'm selling my fish here. If you work on your body, your sound is going to change.
Then I got the chance to interview Kenny Robinson from Robinson's Remedies, and he is just a very kind man. I just really enjoyed our conversation together. He has found a way to serve through his pain, to have something that's chronic, like cold sores that he's dealt with his whole life, and have some pretty hard experiences with other musicians because of that. That can be hard to find kind of the silver lining or how to turn that into a positive, but Kenny has, by creating Lip Repair and Lip Renew and all these products that Robinson's Remedies is doing. And it was interesting to talk to him about the genesis of that specific part of his journey, because when he said that this stuff was just for him, he didn't want to market it, he didn't want to put himself out there like that. But then when he came to that realization that not doing so would be kind of selfish, that took me a little off guard, because I wasn't expecting him to get that candid. But it taught me, and it teaches all of you, I hope, a valuable lesson as musicians, that you have something of value in our marketplace, to use a business term. We work incredibly hard at our craft, to then not get compensated the way that we probably feel that we should. So my point in saying this, and Kenny's point, was just saying marketing yourself does not mean you have to be a slimy salesman, which is sometimes how we equate that. If you have something that you know is going to help other people, then you have an obligation to get that to other people. That's how I view it. That's how I view this podcast in a way. And that could go with private lessons, that could go with gigs, that could go with a wellness product that could help a lot of people. Your experience can be very valuable to people. So don't be afraid to share it with others. I mean, whether or not you sell it, but take with this type of stuff. So here's my conversation with Kenny. I think I've just seen a hesitation to market what you do as a musician. And then also, if you do have something that you are passionate about that you feel like can help people, there's still that kind of aversion. And I kind of want to go a little bit deeper with you on something you had said earlier when somebody had told you that you should market it. What were some of your reservations about marketing it?
I was just like, oh, it's just for me, you know? And then I said, that's a selfish way to think about that. I said I could share it with people, you know, tell people what to do. But they said the only way you're going to get it out in the world is to market it.
Right.
And I said, okay. So I started talking to, you know, people that are marketers, you know, and everybody thinks they're a marketer. I remember when I first started doing it, I was thinking, oh, this will be easy. No, it ain't. You know,
it's not.
I mean, I'm still not making any money from the company, and we've been doing this for 8 years now. Almost 9 years now.
Almost 9 years.
You know?
It's like you build it and they won't come. You know, to borrow a phrase from a famous movie.
They do, but I mean, we're finally at a break-even point where we're making money, but we got like a loan that we wonder if we're ever going to be able to pay it back, you know, but I think we will. But that's what I want to do, is just get this loan paid back. And I want to just make enough money from this that I can go around the world and get this message out about why it works. And why, and if you suffer from cold sores or chop injuries, hey, we got you covered. You know, I'm dedicating my life as my own lips as a lip laboratory to say, if I can do this, you can too.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And if anybody out there in podcast land, as I affectionately call it, can get something from what you just said, it's that there is so many beautiful things that can come from a difficult experience, and so many people you can help through your difficult experience. And I mean, all the trumpet players and brass musicians in the world are grateful that you put this stuff out there. And
I hope so.
Then I had my conversation with Dr. Tracy Qian. And she was somebody that I actually had reached out to because she was one of the first listeners of the show. And I wanted to kind of get her experience, what, you know, she had experienced listening to the show. I knew when I talked to her that I wanted to get her on the show at some point, and we were finally able to do that, to make that work. She has done a lot of research on trauma and what she calls musical trauma and psychological injuries, which we hadn't really put that name to it on the show yet. These psychological injuries that really affect our playing. And the studies and the surveys that she's done just were astounding to me. The fact that like 55.3% of the people she studied that had gone through injury didn't seek help. And 88% of those people didn't even know where to go to find help. And then when she said that, I was just kind of like, hence the reason for this show, right? Because people need to know where they can go to find help, which is where I need your help, honestly, to help share these episodes so that people who are going through injury will have the resources, have the knowledge of the resources that they can reach out to. So, and then we got to talk about things with organist health, which I hadn't done yet on the show. We hadn't gotten the chance to talk about yet on the show. And especially something I'm really passionate about right now is hearing health. That's the part that you're going to want to go and listen to again, because the decibel levels and the duration that we can listen to things healthily will shock you. I'm sure of it, unless you had already heard about it before. But anyway, here's my conversation with Dr. Qian.
Most of the traumatic experience or in common sense, we thought, okay, maybe you just have performance anxiety. So maybe the performance or stage will be the main cause for those traumatic experience. So all I have to solve is just how to perform well or how to feel calm or less nervous before stage. But actually, in the survey, there are a lot of other causes or a lot of other reasons can cause those traumatic experience, musical experience. For example, like besides performance anxiety and stage fright, which are probably the two major causes for the traumatic experience, but there are a lot of others like toxic environment, toxic relationship with instructors. That's probably the top two
Really?
of the causes. Yeah. Failed performance is first one, the top one, and toxic relationship with instructor. That could include receiving negative, abusive comments from instructors, or physical injury is another big reason, a big cause, because some
Right.
people, they might feel so influenced about how they used it to perform because of the physical injury. And some people said some very negative psychological suggestions. For example, if they're receiving some unprofessional suggestions from peers or from colleagues, that will also cause some traumatic experience. And perfectionism, which is
Oh, yeah.
not surprised, but not surprised for musicians because we're probably all perfectionism. And harassments, unfair treatments, or needs that have not been met or have been ignored, body shaming, racism,
Yeah.
unprofessional colleagues, which I already mentioned that before. Yeah. So all of those are just some brief summary about the answer that I collected from the survey. But those
Yeah.
are kind of like really commonly occurring causes that I saw in the survey.
And we had Dr. Jordi Albert. And Jordi, he is another person who's been on my recovery team for a time, and he just knows so much. I mean, I barely said anything on that show, which is honestly not a bad thing for me, because I'm a student, just like you guys. I'm learning just along with you guys. And the fact that he got braces just to research how to teach trumpet effectively with those who have gone through getting braces and trying to play a brass instrument just was astounding to me, that he would go to that length to help other people out. And he also mentioned something that I don't feel like I talk about enough on the show, is the fact that the music is still the center of everything that we do, right? As musicians, as injured musicians. The input, as he said, is musical, right? That inner hearing that he talked about. But that being said, we do the physical work and we do the mindset work so that the music can do its job, right? And we can be vessels for it. So yeah, when we're rehabilitating, we do need to spend more time on the physical and the mental. But that's so that the musical side can have less restraints when it's going through us. So here's my conversation with Dr. Jordi Albert.
Playing an instrument, in my opinion, has 4 different group of skills. Okay? Cognitive skills. And inside these cognitive skills is the inner hearing. I want to speak about this.
Yeah.
Okay? Motor skills, that means to move. Not to think about moving. This is a cognitive skill. Interpersonal skills, so it means skills about being with others, and intrapersonal skills about myself. Discipline is an intrapersonal skill.
Absolutely.
Playing lead trumpet is an interpersonal skill. But if you have a lack of intrapersonal skill and you play first trumpet and you feel just important in your life because you are the first trumpet player, not because probably you have a problem with your fathers or your parents, you have problems with your colleagues. And the only way to have self-esteem is to play the first trumpet. You have not intrapersonal skills, and your interpersonal skills will be affected. So the only way to find the balance is to balance these 4 group of skills. So for example, if you have a lot of analysis skills, of course you will analyze the pieces very well, you will find the phrases very well. But if you have a lack of motor skills, you cannot use this. It's not possible. Okay. But even if you have a very good motor skills and you have high notes, but you have a lack of understanding of the music in cognitive skills, and you have a lack of intrapersonal skills, this is very common. Yeah. You are not going to play the trumpet as a professional. So many people is really confused about this. And many people just want to play the trumpet very well. That what it means to play the instrument very well. Playing an instrument means these 4 groups of skills. So the thing
Absolutely.
you can see that two of these groups are about emotions. And if I have to say, these two are the basis of the other two groups. Yeah. So the four groups are connected. So when I started to understand what it means to play an instrument, and I started to my PhD is about motor skills, how it works playing the trumpet, but you can extrapolate to any instrument. So it's possible to use the theory that I developed to, especially with brass or wind instrument, but you can use it in other instrument. So I understood that these motor skills are not working alone, are always working with the cognitive skills, intrapersonal skills, and interpersonal skills. Because, for example, if you have no discipline, you cannot train the trumpet as is needed. Yeah.
Right.
That if you have not motor skills and you have a lot of discipline, you cannot train the trumpet as is needed. Because even if you are trying and trying and trying, you need to change the sequence of exercises because you are not getting results.
And lastly, we had Allison Gardner, who came recommended to me by Dr. Lee Pearson. And she was just so much fun to talk to because I feel like everything she said sparked another question that wasn't even on my list of things to say. And she just, again, like Lee did, taught me how sacred teaching is. That as teachers and educators, we're not there to push our own agenda, but teach to the students' needs. And then as a coach, because that's what we really are, the student already has everything that they need inside of them. We are just bringing it out of them through curiosity as a teacher. And fostering those healthy relationships is what keeps our students healthy. It helps them to view their progress in a healthy way and bring that level of vitality to their playing and their interpersonal musical relationships, in my mind. She talked about how academia, the role that academia will play in changing the landscape for music education to create that healthy environment that we talk about so much on the show. And really how important coaching is really becoming in our field. That specifically, that part about coaching, I think is we're going to start seeing that a lot more in our field. The performance coaching, these transformation coaches, the things I do in Musician Unchained, where we're working on the mindset part of getting through an injury. So anyway, here's my conversation with Allison. We always talk about the student always I feel like so many master classes I've been a part of is just always be learning, be always a student of your instrument and everything, which is great. I'm 100% a proponent for that. But I don't know if I've ever really heard anyone really talk about curiosity from the teacher standpoint to the benefit of the student, because some of the most impactful teachers I've had embody that. And just each lesson is an act of exploration for them as well as it is for me.
Yes.
And I think just taking that sort of approach versus having an agenda, I love the title coach.
Yeah.
Versus a teacher or a professor or something like that, because if we're doing it right, one of my favorite definitions of coach, and there's different methodologies for coaching, is the student has everything that they already need within them. And so your job as a coach is just to ask questions to bring it out of them.
Yeah.
Right. And that takes a lot of curiosity on the part of the teacher. And fostering that connection through curiosity on both sides, I think can really, talking about health, physical, emotional, psychological, the whole nine, it starts with the culture that you're creating within that environment,
Well, I also like to think too that we're nurturing souls.
Oh yeah.
We're nurturing these beings in what we do. And what a beautiful way to do that through music. And if we are doing it in the right spirit, if we're coming from the heart
and we're using our heads, but we're coming from the heart. We're able to ask the right questions. We're able to develop the curiosity in ourselves enough to understand this being. And that person that you are connecting with, they'll learn that. They'll start to develop that for themselves. Instead of berating themselves that they aren't playing better, they'll say, "What's going on today? I wonder what that is." It's strange, isn't it? Oh, well, that's what today looks like, that they have they pick up that sense of allowing things to be the way they are, and at the same time getting a little curious about it. That's kind of an interesting thing. This spurred something you said spurred another thing that I wanted to share because when talking with teachers, you're talking to people who all have an experience that it has been very impactful for them in terms of they've decided to be teachers. They decided to teach music. So this is a big thing for them. And whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, to shift a perception or shift a perspective that kind of has defined you up until now is really kind of triggering. And so I'm going to be doing a workshop in ASTA next week for the American String Teachers Association.
Cool.
And I'm working on the things that I want to have the teachers experience, because I think that a lot of this we can relate to if we experience it, and then we can see that shift. And in this workshop, I'm going to start out by having all the teachers in the room take a pencil in the right hand. I don't care if they're left-handed. They're going to take it in the right hand, and they're going to hold it between their thumb and their middle finger, and they're going to instruct, but they're going to have to write it on the top line, and they're going to have to write it in block lettering. And I'm going to be very specific about it. I'm going to correct them as I walk through the room, and then we'll talk about what that experience is like for them. What is that experience like? What did you want? What were you wanting in this? And probably things like, I want to get out of here, or I am wanting approval, or I want to do it right, or what have you. Some people will feel nervous from this, having someone looking over them and imposing that instruction on them. And then we'll do it a second way, where they can use either hand, they can hold it the way they want to. We're going to explore and experiment with different things. I'll ask a lot of questions, see, what it is they want to write. And we're going to put inquire, but they can use any font they want. They can put it anywhere on the page they want, so that we have a completely different experience in a writing exercise. And I think that in having those two experiences back to back, you really see the difference. You can feel the difference. You can experience, oh, my body was doing this and this and this in the first one. And in the second one, I felt very free to do what I wanted to do. And I was much more feeling safe and relaxed, And that transfers so well to what we do as teachers when we're instructing.
And that's all she wrote for season 3. I'm so grateful that you guys have stayed with us, and the podcast keeps growing. I think we're in like 35 or almost 40 countries, I think now, which is so humbling for me. I'm so grateful to all of you who are sharing it. Please keep doing that. Please keep sending it to people who you believe that can benefit from this, and subscribe to all those podcasty things that sometimes I feel a little bit weird asking for that whole like and subscribe deal, But reach out to me. I would be thrilled to hear your experience listening to the show, and how it's impacted you, how it's changed things for you. Join the newsletter. We're still going to keep the newsletter going during the off season. I'll be clipping out, parts of each episode, and posting those, as well as putting out more studies, and things like that. If you are interested in exploring a coaching relationship through Musician Unchained, that's also available to you. Just hit up the link in the description. And if you feel so inclined to donate to support this mission, help me pay some bills, that would be very much appreciated. And there's all these things that I got for you on that website, musicianunchained.com. So as well as like the links to our social media. Just keep giving us a follow and sharing this mission that we have here. So like I always say, until next time, keep on keeping on and keep trusting the process. Hey, thanks for tuning into this episode of Trust the Process, the official podcast of Musician Unchained, the newest coaching program dedicated to helping musicians navigate and overcome injury. But before you go, I have a few quick ways you can stay connected and support our growing community. First of all, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me a text with the link below and share your thoughts, questions, or just say hi. You can also check the show out on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We also would love to see you in our Facebook support group, Trust the Process Podcast Injured Musician Support Group. If you found value in today's episode, consider making a donation to support our mission of empowering musicians worldwide. Every contribution helps us create more content and resources for you, so visit link number 2 below to support the mission. If you decide to donate, I'll send you my newest resource, the Injured Musician Toolkit, which is an ebook designed to give you tools to help you get through your injury. Subscribe to our newsletter to get exclusive insights, tips, sneak previews of episodes, and announcements straight to your inbox. Act now and I will send you a free gift. So sign up at www.musicianunchained.com/newsletter. And if you or someone you know would like to go deeper with me in the topics of injury and mindset, head over back to musicianunchained.com and check out the Let's Hang tab. As always, I want to thank Daniel Baldwin, my audio engineer, and my sister Dana Lovell for her help with the promotional materials. There is no podcast without them. But before I go, I want to tell you how much I deeply appreciate your time and support. You are not alone on this journey. There are musicians and educators out there who need this resource, and we need to get it to them. Together, we are breaking the chain of old habits and thought patterns that don't serve us anymore, and unchaining the potential within ourselves to face each challenge with strength and resilience. So, as I always say, keep on keeping on and keep trusting the process. Until next time.